reading this morning comes to us from the first book of Samuel, chapter 3, beginning at verse 1. We pick up the story of the judges of Israel in the time when Samuel was a boy in tutelage under the judge Eli. Now, the boy Samuel was ministering to the Lord under Eli. The word of the Lord was rare in those days. Visions were not widespread. At that time, Eli, whose eyesight had begun to grow dim so that he could not see, was lying down in his room. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was lying down in the temple of the Lord where the ark of God was. Then the Lord called, "Samuel, Samuel." And he said, "Here I am." He ran to Eli and said, "Here I am, for you called me." But he said, "I did not call you. Lie down again." So he went and lay down. The Lord called again, "Samuel." Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, for you called me." But he said, "I did not call you, my son. Lie down again." Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, and the word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him. The Lord called Samuel again a third time, and he got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, for you called me." Then Eli perceived that the Lord was calling the boy. Therefore Eli said to Samuel, "Go, lie down, and if he calls you, you shall say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" So Samuel went and lay down in his place. Now the Lord came and stood there, calling as before, "Samuel, Samuel." And Samuel said, "Speak, for your servant is listening." Then the Lord said to Samuel, "See, I am about to do something in Israel that will make both ears of anyone who hears of it tingle. On that day I will fulfill against Eli all that I have spoken concerning his house from beginning to end. For I have told him that I am about to punish his house forever for the iniquity that he knew, because his sons were blaspheming God, and he did not restrain them. Therefore I swear to the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be expiated by sacrifice or offering forever." Samuel lay there until morning. Then he opened the doors of the house of the Lord. Samuel was afraid to tell the vision to Eli, but Eli called Samuel and said, "Samuel, my son." He said, "Here I am." Eli said, "What was it that he told you? Do not hide it from me. May God do to you, and more also, if you hide anything from me of all that he told you." So Samuel told him everything and hid nothing from him. Then he said, "It is the Lord. Let him do what seems good to him." As Samuel grew up, the Lord was with him, and let none of his words fall to the ground. And all of Israel from Dan to Beersheba knew that Samuel was a trustworthy prophet of the Lord. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
There are certain sporting events that I have never been able to enjoy. Take ice skating, for instance. And it's not that I don't appreciate the beauty or the grace of the event, but I simply cannot abide the tension. One simply never knows when a skater is going to miss a jump or hit a rough spot in the ice and go down like a ton of bricks. One moment a skater is performing a stunning pirouette or launching into a triple axel, and the next, he or she is dumped unceremoniously on their back, spinning out of control. Another event that makes me nervous, and therefore I find it hard to enjoy, are relay races. Now, as you know, runners on a relay team have their leg of the race to finish, and then they pass the baton on to the next runner who continues. It sounds so simple, yet I hold my breath every time a team reaches that critical moment when the runner holds out the baton for the next one to take. It seems so straightforward, yet the timing and skill and passing that baton, especially with both runners sprinting, takes countless hours of training to master. And still, one miscue, and the race is over, at least for that team. And that team can't just get it right once. It takes multiple passes to finish the race. And the critical moment comes in that all-important act of passing that baton to the next team member. Unless a team masters that skill, they will never be able to finish a race with any hope of success. And still to this day, I hold my breath during every relay race when that baton is passed, and hope to finally breathe a sigh of relief when that last runner crosses the finish line. Well, after today's reading from the book of Samuel, I am still holding my breath. Yet, I hold out hope for a final sigh of relief. You see, the people of God from the time of Israel in Samuel's age to the church today are running a race. Only the race we are running is a relay race. When Paul, for instance, says that he has finished the race, he can be said, I believe, to have finished his leg of a much longer race, a marathon that we call the journey of faith. And for any relay race to continue, those who have gone before must pass on the baton of faith and leadership to a new generation. Again, when Paul explained the meaning of the Lord's Supper, he proclaims that he is passing on to us what he has received from others. And it is up to us to relay that faith and this church to the next generation. It will not do to hang on to everything and refuse to let go any more than we can drop the baton and claim to have been faithful runners. We have a leg of the race, our part of the journey to complete, yet our final act in that journey remains. The all-important act of passing that baton to the next generation of runners in order to do our part to ensure that the journey of faith will continue long after you and I are gone. Still, if it is nerve-wracking to watch that baton being passed as a spectator, it is positively frightening as a participant. What if I drop the baton? Or if the person I have trusted with the baton fumbles it? If I pass the baton and the race goes on, will I be left behind? And am I fit to take a baton that is handed to me? These are all good questions and enough to raise anxiety in any church member. Yet, friends, I am confident that this church has been given what it takes to stay in the race and pass the baton of faith on. In truth, the story of Eli and young Samuel is a good example of why I think that we are up to this task, why I think this church is in a good position to pass on the faith that we have received to the next generation. Now, Eli and young Samuel lived in the days when Israel was ruled by judges, that is, inspired leaders who were often usually prophets. Eli, no doubt, had hoped that his own sons would become judges after he was gone. Yet his sons were profligate and had already been warned. Eli had already been warned that his house would be punished since he had allowed his sons to abuse their positions of authority for their own gain. Yet when this young upstart Samuel kept coming to him and waking him in the middle of the night, even though he had not been called, Eli did not take advantage of this situation to dismiss Samuel from his service. Samuel was, after all, a possible competitor, to succeed him as the judge of Israel rather than his own sons. Yet instead, he realized that God was calling Samuel and instructed him on how to answer that call time and age when, not like our own age, people sought power and advantage for themselves and their own families over others. Eli handed the baton of leadership to Samuel and told him how to receive a vision from God, despite knowing how rare such visions had become and what it meant if Samuel were indeed to receive such a vision from God. Such a statement, I believe, is no exaggeration. Eli beautifully and flawlessly passed the baton of faith to Samuel. Indeed, some scholars even argue that Samuel was performing a so-called incubation ritual. That is, he had been set up to sleep near the Ark of the Covenant in hopes that he would receive a vision from God and end the long drought in such revelations. Furthermore, when Samuel reluctantly but faithfully told his vision of God's judgment to Eli, Eli did not doubt Samuel's account or take out his frustration on Samuel. Instead, he believed him, and in effect strengthened Samuel's own confidence in his call. And not only did Eli faithfully pass the baton to Samuel, but he let him run with it. He trusted Samuel, and his trust was not misplaced. And it to come full circle years later, when Samuel came to the point when he was asked to pass the baton of leadership, he followed the example of Eli. For Samuel's son, like the sons of Eli, turned out to be profligate. Yet Samuel faced an even bigger challenge than Eli, since he was not asked to pass the baton of faith to another judge, as he had been, but to a king, which he had warned against. Still, when the time came, Samuel flawlessly passed on the baton of leadership that had been handed to him, to the one that God had chosen. And the relay race that we call the journey of faith, that has brought us here to this moment, continued. The good news is that this church has leaders who follow the example of Eli and Samuel. I have seen the commitment, this commitment, and your willingness to reach out beyond your own families and open this church to all of God's children. I have watched this church foster leadership in people of all ages and called them to serve. I have taken heart in your expressions of hope to see the next generation take on the new responsibility, to take that baton. How do we pass that on? Passing the baton in a church, like in a relay race, is challenging, and it is risky. So what does it take for a church to begin to make such a transition? Well, first, we have to get up to speed, like runners, right? That runner getting ready to take the baton has to start just as we have to keep moving as well. The church can set the example of pace and teamwork necessary to move forward on the journey of faith. It's not about a few people in the church doing it all, but about each of us doing our part. Find your place in our church. Make your commitment of time and talent, and you will be doing your part to keep us moving so that we have something to pass on. Our new committee day, which we are beginning after worship, is designed to help us get up to speed, to work together as one body, to allow you to contribute your talent to our church. Second, the church can take a firm grip on the faith in order to present it to others. We have to have it in hand to be able to pass it on. What does it mean to have faith in Christ? How can the church be a reconciled community in service to Jesus Christ? What is the incarnation, the Trinity, the biblical teaching of predestination, the meaning of the sacraments? From the abstract to the concrete, it is important to be able to articulate our faith in words and actions. Otherwise, we will have nothing of substance to pass on. Next, we can be mentors of those in the faith we hope who will receive this baton of faith, this baton of leadership. Samuel was nurtured in the faith from childhood. He grew up amid the practices of the faith and the wise guidance of his elders. From our own children to new members, the church can be patient and cultivate its future leaders until they are up to speed and ready to receive the call to lead. Your support of Sunday school, our Christian Kids Club, the Montreat Youth Conference, Acolytes, and the like provide our own incubation rights where we can mentor our children and youth even as we learn from them, as Eli did. Finally, and perhaps hardest of all, once the church is up to speed, has that baton of faith firmly in hand, and has fostered teammates who are also up to speed and ready to receive the baton we offer them, you got to do what? Got to let go. We let go and trust them to take the lead. Letting go is a daunting challenge. Again, we face uncertainties and may ask, what if we who pass the faith on are left behind? What if they go in a direction we would advise against? Then again, what if instead of complaining or finding fault, you cheered them on like excited teammates, followed their lead as once you had asked them to follow, gave them words of encouragement during the long uphill struggles, as Eli did with Samuel? What happens then? The church happens. The church happens in a new generation. And the relay race we call the journey of faith continues to move the church forward. Let all God's people say,